Welcome to Scriptura's layer-by-layer overview of Psalm 16. I have said to the Lord, "You are my Lord." Property lines have fallen for me in the most delightful places. For you will not abandon my life to Sheol. You will not let your loyal one experience corruption. You will show me the way to life, fullness of joy in your presence, delights in your right hand forever. Psalm 16 covers a surprising range of ideas, all having to do with looking for the true source of good and delight. When people are in danger, many turn to other sources for help, other gods. But David firmly decides to depend only on the Lord, the God with whom he has a covenant. He declares his confidence that only in the Lord will he find safety and delight forever. The phrase delights forever reminds us of how important delight is in David's life. Even when he is in danger or trouble, he insists on announcing his delight in the Lord, even at that moment. The poetry connects David's delight at that moment to forever delight. David has found what is good and what does and will make him delight forever. The first verse of Psalm 16 has two parts: "Protect me, God," and "because I have taken refuge," that is, found a safe place, "in you." These are the themes of the two main sections that follow, which we have called "I Take Refuge" and "God Protects." This opening request is full of confidence. David is not begging for help, but asking for what he knows already belongs to him. He's asking God to provide the protection he had promised as a covenant partner. In the first main section, "I Take Refuge," David announces that he is only loyal to the Lord. This is very different from other people who freely give their loyalty to other gods, or even to spirits from the place of the dead. These people loudly declare how much they delight in different spirits and gods. They even use divination, looking for answers from the dead or gods. But David refuses to take any part of these actions. He only has contempt or hatred for them. He turns to the Lord alone as his portion and cup, describing his close relationship with the Lord by calling the Lord his share in life, what has been given him as his own possession. The Lord decides David's lot, his destiny in life. David insists that he is completely satisfied with what the Lord has given him. His inheritance is beautiful to him. David is overflowing with confidence, joy, and delight in this section. In the second main section, "God Protects," David again uses the language of divination, or looking for answers from the gods, but he turns it upside down. During David's time, people believed that they could find messages from the gods in animal organs, like the kidneys or liver. So people would kill animals to inspect their organs for messages from the gods. David refuses to do this. David does receive messages from God, but they come from inside his own body. Even while David is thinking deeply on his bed at night, God's message comes through his own thoughts and emotions, in his own organs. The Lord advises him directly. In the message he receives, the Lord promises him that he is completely safe and protected. David's body will live securely without any fear of death or Sheol, the place of the dead. Death has no power over him. He does not need to worry about corruption or decay. David continues in the confidence, joy, and delight he felt in the first section. Because David knows that the Lord protects those who take refuge in him, his request for protection can at the same time express his thankfulness. He asks God to protect him, knowing that God will grant it. he's thankful and delights because he is certain that God will protect him. This certainty leads him equally to strongly declare his total commitment to the Lord. God is David's Lord and the source of all his good, everything good in his life. David knows that he can get nothing by going to other gods because he already has everything that is good. This confidence shapes his response to danger. He turns immediately to God and asks God to protect him like he had promised. Because he is confident in God's promised protection, David can rest securely. His circumstances may seem unstable and dangerous, and other people in his position might turn to divination and other gods for help. But because David completely trusts in his God, he rests securely. Some background information will be helpful for understanding this psalm. Consulting God. People have always searched for ways of consulting God to find answers to their questions. God gave his people the Urim and Thummim as sacred objects to be used to reveal God's answers to specific questions. God's people also often cast lots through small objects like dice to make decisions by chance. They believed God controlled the result, so this was a common way to find what God wanted. In addition to these methods, people would go to a prophet to inquire of the Lord. This was the most common means of seeking an answer from God to a problem. The answer could come through the prophet's words or sometimes through dreams. Divination means the rituals used to seek advice from a god. In ancient times, divination was a highly developed art. People wrote long manuals on how to find the will of the gods. This included how to read the will of the gods in the organs of sacrificed animals, most commonly the liver, but also the kidneys. Much of Psalm 16 is about acceptable and unacceptable ways of consulting God. When one method of seeking an answer from God didn't provide a clear answer, people would resort to other methods. David must choose whether or not he will resort to any other methods besides what God has already given. The other method David discusses in Psalm 16 is consulting the dead. When mighty people died in the ancient world, people thought they became a kind of spirit. When someone was in trouble, they could talk to these spirits or consult the dead to seek advice. For example, when King Saul asked the Lord what he should do, but the Lord did not reply, Saul became desperate. So he resorted to consulting the spirit of the prophet Samuel, who had died. Mediums were people who communicated with dead spirits. Although mediums were supposed to be prohibited in Israel, King Saul was still able to find one working in Israel. This shows that this form of divination existed at the time when a king ruled over Israel. This story about Saul gives us an idea of how consulting the dead worked. Consulting the dead was a last resort used when people were desperate. Saul feared Israel would have to battle the Philistines, but when he inquired of the Lord, he received no answer. The Lord did not answer by dreams or by Urim or by the prophets. So at last, Saul turned to a medium to consult the spirit of dead Samuel to learn what to do. While the story of King Saul does not mention it, other records show that blood libations, offerings of blood poured onto the ground, were also used to contact spirits. Inheritance. In Psalm 16, the word inheritance means more than just a piece of land. It also includes the entire covenant relationship with the Lord. For an Israelite, their inheritance included a relationship with the Lord, the God of Israel, with every promise the Lord had ever made to his people. This includes both the blessings for being faithful and the curses if they disobeyed. To delight in this inheritance meant agreeing with the covenant and obeying the laws that were part of it. To despise or reject the inheritance meant considering God's promises as not enough and turning to other gods. David uses the terms cup and portion as images for his assigned share in life. When David calls the Lord his portion and his cup, he declares that the Lord is responsible for the direction David's life is taking. When he says that his property lines have fallen in the most delightful places, he compares the Lord to a very pleasant piece of land. In fact, a beautiful inheritance. The inheritance here is more than just physical ground. It's the inheritance of a covenant with the Lord. This covenant includes the promise that the Lord will protect and provide for those who are faithful to him. David can say that the Lord is his portion and cup, because both the Lord is the source of all he receives now, but also because the Lord is the source of all delights he will receive in the future. Death and corruption. The first half of the psalm rejects consulting the dead as an acceptable way to find answers from God. The last half of the psalm rejects the idea that death is a force the Lord cannot control. David has no fear of death in any form. He does not deny that he will physically die. However, he denies that God will abandon him to Sheol, the place of the dead. This means death has no power to keep David away from God. Just as he denies any spirit or power of death to advise him, so he denies any power of death to harm him. When David says, "You will not let your loyal one experience corruption or decay," he's removing any power from the dead spirits. Decay here is an image of the power death has over life. But David declares that God will always be victorious, never spirits from the underworld. It is as if David says, "You will always protect me and keep me safe in your covenant. You will never abandon me to the power of another God. You are more powerful than death." In the New Testament, people understood this verse as a prophetic message that Jesus' actual body would never decay, because he was only dead 3 days. Even if David did not have this future picture in mind exactly, he was clearly proclaiming God as more powerful than any power of death. When we remember Psalm 16 with the idea, delights forever, we can see David rejecting the power of death and instead announcing the power of life forever. During a time when he was likely in great danger, David resisted the urge to look for help from anyone other than his covenant God, the Lord. He refused to follow the example of others, like King Saul, who turned to other gods and the dead for answers. David first turns his focus inward. There, he finds that the Lord is already advising him. God is speaking directly to him through his own feelings and thoughts, promising him complete protection and security. But the Lord's message goes beyond keeping his body safe. He shows David the way to perfect joy in the Lord's presence, the delights in store for him forever. David's faith in the Lord reaches far beyond his current life. This promise of delights forever sustains David, giving him the strength to endure the trials and hardships in this current life. Please note that this video provides only one coherent interpretation of the psalm. See our website, psalms.scriptura.org, for details on other interpretations as well, including an exegetical issues video focused exclusively on the interpretation of verses 2 to 4.